section 1.6 on rational equations. So when we're solving rational equations, remember that you want to check the bottom to see if you can factor any of the denominators. All right, once that happens, you want to find the least common multiple. So really what you're finding is one of each denominator is what you should be multiplying by. So for example, I need to get rid of x minus 5 in the bottom, so I'm going to multiply this fraction by x minus 5, so that this x minus 5 in the bottom will cancel out with this one that I'm multiplying by, and my fraction will be gone. Because I'm multiplying this fraction by x minus 5, everything in the problem needs to be multiplied by x minus 5. And that is just laws of equations that tell me I need to do that. All right, so every term in the equation has been multiplied by x minus 5 because we multiplied this first fraction by x minus 5 so that we can get rid of the denominator. Looking at the next fraction, it has a denominator of x minus 5, so to get rid of it, I need to multiply by x minus 5. Thankfully, I am already doing that, so there is already something that will cancel with the x minus 5. There's no need to multiply by it a second time. All right, so now that I've gotten everything set up, I'm going to go through and do my multiplication. The x minus 5s will cancel out, leaving me an x. Here the x minus 5s will cancel out and leave me a 5. Then I'm going to multiply negative 5 times x. And I'm going to multiply negative 5 times negative 5. Make sure you watch your signs there. That's negative goes with that 5. That's whole one thing. Make sure you multiply by negative 5 on both of them. All right, now I'm going to simplify. So 5 and 25, I can combine those together to get 30. All right, I see that I have a linear equation, so I'm going to get my variable terms on one side, constants on the other. So I'm going to move this negative 5x over here with this x. When I cross the equal sign, or if I add it to both sides, I get a positive 5x plus x makes 6x's. I'm then going to divide by 6 to say that x equals 5. All right, now I need to make sure that I take my solution and check it in the denominator. So if I look at my denominator, if I take my solution of 5 and I plug it in here, 5 minus 5, I get 0. And I cannot have that. 0 in the denominator. So that tells me that my solution of 5 is no good because it will make my denominator be a 0. And since there is no other solution to offer up, my answer will be that there is no solution. And you can either write the words no solution, or you can do the circle with the slash through it. Either one of these is acceptable. You do not have to write both of them. All right, let's look at the next one, number 4. All right, I'm going to look through all my denominators. This I can't factor, this I can't factor, but x squared minus 3x has a GCF of x. So I'm going to factor out that x. If you're still having issues with GCF or factoring of any kind, please make sure you go by the Learning Lab or come see me in my office so that we can discuss and make sure you understand factoring. All right, now looking at everything in the equation, looking for any fractions. This first term here is a fraction. I need to multiply by x minus 3 so that I can cancel out this one that's in the bottom. So I'm going to multiply by x minus 3. Because I multiplied this first term by x minus 3, everything has to be multiplied by x minus 3. So every term in my equation has been multiplied by x minus 3 because I need it in the first equation so that I can divide them out. I wrote this one wrong. That should be an x there. All right, now I need, looking at the next term, is a fraction. I need something that will divide out the x. Now this x and this x can't divide out because this x minus 3 is one thing together. And the only way you could divide it out was if you divide it by itself. So what I need to do is multiply this by an x, so that this x and this x will have something to divide out. Because I'm multiplying this fraction by x, I have to multiply everything by x. Alright, now that I have it all written out, I'm going to go through and actually do the multiplication. So on the first fraction, the x minus 3's will divide out, and I'll be left with x times x minus 5 plus, and on the second fraction, the x's are going to cancel out, and I'll be left with 1 times x minus 3, which is just x minus 3. And on this last one here, the x's are going to divide out, and the x minus 3's divide out, leaving me negative 7. Alright, I've gotten rid of my fractions. Now I'm going to get rid of my parentheses, so distribute the x, give me x squared minus 5x plus x minus 3 equals negative 7. I'm going to simplify the left side. Negative 5x and 1x makes negative 4x. Alright, so now that the left side and the right side are as simple as I can get them, I'm going to look to see what type of equation I have. This is now a quadratic equation. So since it's quadratic, I want to set it equal to 0 first. So I'm going to add my 7 there. That'll be x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Then at this time I can decide, do I want to factor it or use the quadratic formula or complete the square, whichever method you've learned, and also whichever method would be easiest. So if this would not factor, then I would have to use either quadratic formula or completing the square. However, this one will factor. That is the fastest way and easiest way. So I'm going to factor it out. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Negative 2 plus negative 2 is negative 4. Since these two factors are exactly the same, I really only need to take one of them and set it equal to 0 and solve for x. Alright, now that I have my solution, I want to come back to the original problem and check to make sure it does not make any of my denominators equal 0. So if I fill in a 2 here, 2 minus 3 is negative 1. That's not a 0, so it works good there. If I fill a 2 in here, that would just give me a denominator of 2. That's not a 0, so that works there. Since these two factors are the exact same as my other denominators, if it didn't make these 0, it's not going to make these 0. Alright, let's check this one. Number 5. Alright, so our need to look through our denominators. Can't factor, but this one does have a GCF. So I'll pull that out, leaving me x times x plus 1. Notice that x and x plus 1 and x plus 1, usually if there's something that's going to factor, at least one of the factors is going to be one of the other denominators. So that should help you in factoring. Also, it should help you in deciding what your least common multiple will be. Alright, so we need to multiply by x plus 1, or you can look at it this way. This one has multiple factors. Let's start with it. So if I want to get rid of, and you can start wherever you want to, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start with this last one here because it has multiple factors. That means there are multiple things I need to divide out. So if I start here, I need to multiply by an x and also by an x plus 1, so that there is something this x will divide with and that there is something this x plus 1 will divide with. So if I come down here and I multiply by x and x plus 1, alright, that gives this something to divide with and this something to divide with. Alright, now because I multiplied this by x times x plus 1, I need to multiply everything by x times x plus 1. Alright, so what I've done, I've gone through and multiplied each term in my equation by x times x plus 1, because that's what I multiplied this last term by. So I took the first fraction, the first term, multiplied it by x times x plus 1. I took the second fraction, I multiplied it times x plus 1. Alright, now looking at my first fraction, I need an x plus 1 to cancel with. Alright, I'm already multiplying by an x plus 1. No need to multiply a second time, so this x plus 1 and this x plus 1 will divide out. Looking at the second fraction, I need an x to divide with this x. I'm already multiplying by that x from what I multiplied by on this one, so no need to multiply by a second x. I already have something that they will divide with. Alright, on this last one, the x's cancel and the x plus 1's divide out. Let's multiply by what's left. X times 4x is 4x squared, and x times 3 is 3x. 2 times x, and 2 times 1. And then that leaves just 1 at the end. Alright, now when I combine my like terms, 4x squared plus 5x plus 2 equals 1. Alright, I can now see that this is a quadratic equation. I need to set it equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 1. Alright, now that I have it set equal to 0, I can decide can I factor it. If I can't factor it, I must complete the square or use the quadratic formula. Alright, but I believe this one will factor, so I'm going to do a little slide and divide here. I'm going to slide my 4 to the end, leaving me x squared plus 5x now plus 4. I could then factor that into x plus 4 times x plus 1. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 plus 1 is 5. Because I did some slide, I got to do some divide. Then I'm going to simplify. Don't skip the simplifying step. Alright, remember we're solving. We're not looking for factors, we're looking for the x values. So when I simplify 4 over 4, I get 1. 1/4 is as simple as it will get. That gives me an x value of -1 and an x value of -1/4. I want to verify these answers in the original problem. So if I come back to my original problem, if I plug in a -1 here, I get 0. So what that tells me is that -1 is no good, and make sure you indicate that it is no good in some way by either crossing it out or not circling it. Alright, if I try 1/4, -1/4 plus 1 is not 0, it's 3/4. If I fill in -1/4 here, I just have a denominator of -1/4. And if it doesn't make these two 0, it's not going to make that one 0 because they're the exact same. So that tells me that -1/4 is a good solution.